I am here with Natasa Lackovic and Katie Rakow. Natasha works for the Department of Education and Research at Lancaster University. Her research interest is on the impact of materiality, so physical things, objects, and the environment, on students' mental health. Meanwhile, Katie is a PhD student at King's College London, studying the relationship between the virtual learning environment and the mental well-being of staff and students. Today, we've got a short podcast for you discussing considerations you might want to think about when conducting focus groups and interviews online. So Natasha and Katie have kindly agreed to share their experience and their reflections from doing some focus groups and interview activity in the recent months. So Katie and Natasha, thank you very much for your time. Katie, if I could start with you, could you just quickly talk us through what are the considerations that someone might have to make? So what are the key differences between running a focus group online compared to in person?
So a possibly obvious remark, but I think an important one to make before I answer that, is that unlike other methods of data collection, a key feature of a focus group is that it's an interactive process between participants to gain deeper insight into a topic rather than about a set of interviews happening concurrently. So building trust and rapport among the participants is a key factor to gaining deeper insight. And I guess associated with that, there are more people involved when thinking about protecting participant confidentiality. So to answer your question, two differences between online and in-person focus groups is that some particularly pertinent ones are you and your participants are in separate physical environments. So being in the same online environment is not equivalent to being in the same physical environment. And so this means that it's difficult to guarantee that participants won't be able to be viewed on the screen or overheard by others, raising really important questions around participant confidentiality. And it may also mean that they're distracted by different external factors and so have different experiences of the same online focus group. So that's the first thing, the environment. And then the second one is that you may all have slightly different technical experiences. And so some people might have a camera on, others might not. Others might have Wi-Fi difficulties, which may mean that they drop in and out. So because you and your participants may not be able to see one another on the screen, you may not be able to use non-verbal cues like body language or eye contact. And those of us who are not visually impaired may not be aware of how much we use these types of non-verbal cues to help ensure we have more constructive interactions with other people. And it also means, because of this technical side of matters, it means that also the method of recording might be different. And again, that has issues that one needs to think about in terms of participant confidentiality.
Great, thank you, Katie. Really comprehensive. What we've outlined the issues, I guess. What from the work you've done in recent months, what are some recommendations you could offer to overcome some of these challenges?
Well, just a couple, and there's, I believe, a handout that I think is going to be linked with this podcast, but a couple of the ways of addressing them, I guess, is number one is checking with your university's IT team and the ethics committee for recommendations for a secure platform to use for focus groups. So including really thinking about the recording of information and the storing of these data in a way that's encrypted. I'd also recommend practicing your focus groups using the recommended platform with a friend so that you can identify potential pitfalls, smooth out the process, and then it also means that you can be really clear in your information sheet with your participants about how their data will be handled and warn them of any pitfalls so that they can make an informed decision. Another one would be keeping invitations anonymous so that people are only known to other participants after they start and join the focus group in that online space. Asking your participants to think about what people can see on your screen about themselves, and also to make sure other people can't see their screen or hear the discussions, so it's only them in the space. And then also beforehand to be thinking about how you can ask them to share a photo of themselves if they don't have a camera, or if they do have a camera, to have it on at the start, so that everybody can be really clear about who they're talking to in the group, because of this whole matter of interaction between participants being super important. And so related to that, you might want to consider giving them a shared task to do that's in relation to the topic, to help encourage them to interact, so they draw the focus away from you and to the topic of interest.
Fabulous, thanks. What how do you have any other recommendations for how to make that environment really supportive, I suppose? I mean, obviously this mode of conducting focus groups is entirely different to running it face to face. For example, we can't rely on non-verbal cues in the way that we used to be able to. So how do you make that environment really comfortable and really engaging for participants, Katie?
So I decided to keep my camera on the whole time, even if other participants or the participants couldn't necessarily have their cameras on, so that they could see that I was listening to them, that I was engaged in what they were saying, that I valued what they were saying, contributing. And so it meant that I made sure that my questions were positioned in a way that wasn't distracting from them, and that was one way that seemed to help to stimulate that discussion among the participants that I was really trying to foster.
Sounds great. Natasha, if I could bring you in here now to talk about interviews. So same considerations really. What do we need to think about when we're conducting interviews online? What reflections do you have? Because I know you've been running a lot of online interviews recently.
Okay, so when switching to online interviews, the central change and consideration is linked to the digital tool you use. I have personally used Microsoft Teams because this is the recommended tool by my university, and I am aware that many universities recommend Microsoft Teams for conducting interviews and also for collaboration. Going back to Katie's point, it is really crucial to consult your university's IT services or ISS in terms of what is the recommended tool, and they will be best to advise on that. What is very important is to make sure that your interview participants actually have given an informed consent. What that means is that you clearly state and describe the digital tool you're using, and how you would record the interview, and how you would store the recorded data. That is very important.
Brilliant, thank you. I'd like to thank you both for contributing, for the time that you've given to this. Also, Katie has kindly put together a document of top tips, which is available on the Smarten website. Do either of you have anything further to add? Tips or recommendations?
Yes. Okay, I would just like to add something in relation to non-verbal cues. So, for example, Katie did mention that, and you can ask your participants whether they want to, put the video on or off. So whether they want to show their faces or not. So if they do, then you would be able to get some visual cues from their videos. It would be great if you have your own video on, so that your participants can read your visual cues and nodding, etc. So that is an option. Another thing is in terms of recording, so you can use digital devices that would record this interview, but you might want to go for the option not to record if that's something you would like to do, because that would then not leave any digital traces behind, and you can do that by actually making notes during the interview, which is what I did. I did write notes. That is labor intense, but it protects the participants in terms of not having any data, any records left behind. So that's one option. But again, the crucial thing is really that you include all of the details about the digital tool you're using in your participant information sheet.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you both so much. It's incredibly helpful, I'm sure, to lots of our Smarter network out there grappling with conducting research in this new world that we're living in. Thank you. And as I say, top tips available on the Smarter website from Katie. And yeah, all that remains to say is thank you very much, and good luck with your individual research projects going forwards. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.